A Chinese merchant vessel called the Zhongda 79 was spotted at Shanghai's Hudong-Zhudong shipyard in December 2025 and early January 2026, receiving something that had no business being on a civilian ship. It was being loaded with close-in weapon systems, vertical launching system cells, and radars, and in total, the ship received 60 vertical launching system cells. That's a weapons loadout you'd expect on a warship. The question that immediately follows is the one nobody in Tokyo can afford to ignore. If China is arming its merchant ships, how do you stop an enemy you can't see coming? Beijing's drive to integrate civilian resources with national defense requirements is designed to supplement the capabilities of what's already the world's largest navy by ship count. And experts say the aim is to find new ways for commercial ships to support People's Liberation Army operations. This isn't a theory anymore. It's a documented program with hardware to prove it. The deployment of unmanned fighters and electromagnetic launching systems on the Zhongda 79 demonstrates China's capability to field numerous launch platforms across potentially hundreds of civilian vessels. Outfitting such ships with military technology brings the possibility that civilian merchant ships may support large-scale combat operations and surprise attacks on adversary airfields or ports, particularly against those in the first and second island chains. Japan sits directly on top of that first island chain, and it's been watching every move. Sea power, along with China's large missile arsenal, is vital to its attempts to counter United States military presence across the first island chain, a north-south defensive line running from the Japanese archipelago to the Malay Peninsula. The Pentagon has said Beijing considers this region its strategic center of gravity. That chain is not abstract geography to Tokyo. It's the ground beneath Japan's feet. Rather than deploying People's Liberation Army Navy vessels directly to form barriers and mock blockades, China's strategy relies on civilian fishing vessels as cover for naval activities. The United States Naval Institute has estimated that China has 200,000 fishing vessels that the state could weaponize. 200,000. That's not a fleet, that's a swarm. On Christmas Day, December 25, 2025, more than 2,000 Chinese fishing vessels deployed to the East China Sea and assembled a mock blockade in a reverse L-shaped formation. 2 weeks later, on January 14, 2026, 1,400 fishing vessels performed a similar maneuver in the same waters. This is China rehearsing. It isn't subtle about it. The December exercise was the first time an exercise of that scale involving fishing vessels had ever been witnessed. Those vessels are thought to have mainly come from Zhejiang province. That scale of coordination doesn't happen by accident. It's a military exercise disguised with fishing nets. To pursue its maritime interests, Beijing draws on three sea forces: the People's Liberation Army Navy, the China Coast Guard, and the People's Armed Forces Maritime Militia. Each force has the world's most ships in its category. The militia is the dangerous third layer, the one that operates in a legal gray zone, hiding behind civilian status while conducting military operations. Much as Russia deployed so-called little green men to maintain plausible deniability during its seizure of Crimea, China could similarly employ its maritime fishing militia as little blue men in flashpoints such as Japan's Ryukyu Islands and Philippine-claimed islets. The camouflage is the point. Civilian ships don't trigger the same military response that warships do. According to a January 2026 United States congressional report, Washington has documented evidence that Beijing's maritime fishing vessels are used to expand Chinese influence, monopolize sea lanes, and push Indo-Pacific nations toward economic dependency. Japan read that report. Japan has also been reading the radar screens all year. So the question now sharpens. China has spent years turning civilian ships into military instruments. What exactly has Japan been building in response? In June 2025, Japan's attention was drawn to the first simultaneous deployment of two Chinese aircraft carriers in the northwestern Pacific near the Japanese islands of Okino-Torishima and Minami-Torishima, where they conducted operational exercises. That moment accelerated decisions that had already been in motion. Japan stopped debating and started deploying. March 31, 2026 marked the first deployment of two new Japanese systems: the hypervelocity gliding projectile for island defense and the upgraded Type 12 surface-to-ship missile. That date matters. It's the moment Japan's counterstrike posture moved from policy documents to physical hardware in the field. The upgraded Type 12 surface-to-ship missile is a significantly extended range version of an existing coastal defense system. The upgraded missile has a range of about 1,000 kilometers, compared to roughly 200 kilometers for the original model, a five-fold increase in reach. That changes the geometry of the entire Western Pacific. Japan deployed upgraded long-range anti-ship missiles to its southernmost main island on March 31st, deploying the Type 12 to Camp Kangun on Kyushu. From Camp Kangun in Kumamoto, the missile's range extends across much of East Asia, potentially reaching large portions of North Korea and parts of China's eastern seaboard. The trap is now armed and anchored in Japan's home islands. Within the operational structure of the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force, these missile batteries are designed to form part of a distributed coastal defense architecture extending across the Nansei Island chain. When connected to reconnaissance aircraft, maritime patrol platforms, and coastal radar networks, the system allows Japanese forces to detect hostile naval formations at long range and engage them before they approach critical maritime chokepoints. This networked approach reinforces an anti-access posture adapted to the geography of southwestern Japan. That architecture is the trap. It's not one missile base. It's a connected kill web stitched across thousands of kilometers of island terrain. Securing the Miyako Strait, which traverses the Ryukyu Islands, may be Japan's top priority in deploying upgraded Type 12 missiles. The Miyako Strait is a critical maritime choke point that the People's Liberation Army Navy must pass through to break out into the open waters of the Pacific. Control that strait, and China's naval breakout becomes a gauntlet. Lose it, and Beijing can encircle Taiwan from the east. A Chinese blockade of the Miyako Strait could complicate Japan's response in the event of a United States-China conflict over Taiwan. China's control of that strait could threaten the residents of the Ryukyu Islands by cutting off vital food and energy supplies, effectively holding them hostage. Such a move could force Japan to back down on supporting the United States in a Taiwan contingency. This is the scenario Japanese planners have nightmares about, and it's the scenario the Type 12 deployment is specifically designed to deny. China exercised its ability to transit Japan's stretch of the first island chain by sending 10 warships through its maritime passes in just the past week of late June 2026. 8 Chinese Navy vessels were spotted heading toward the Pacific Ocean between the afternoon of June 26th and early morning July 1st. China isn't hiding its intentions. The transits are the message. A Japanese Ministry of Defense report, updated in June, states that Chinese military vessels are taking more diverse routes through the Nansei Islands to reach the Pacific Ocean. The report identifies 5 key transit routes through the first island chain: the Osumi Strait, the Yokoate Waterway, the Miyako Strait, and the maritime passages between the islands of Yonaguni and Iriomote, and between Yonaguni and Taiwan. 5 corridors. Japan is now watching all of them. The number of trips by Chinese and Russian ships through Japanese straits is not unusually high, but a Japan Joint Staff spokesman confirmed their operations are certainly expanding and intensifying. That phrase, expanding and intensifying, is the honest summary of where this stands today. Beijing continues to pressure Tokyo over comments on Taiwan by Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, who suggested Tokyo could deploy its military if China uses force to try and seize Taiwan. A Chinese Commerce Ministry statement on January 6th announced a ban on dual-use exports to Japan that could be used for military purposes, including software, technology, and rare earth elements that Japan uses to make chips and drones. The economic weapon is already deployed. Japan felt the pressure and accelerated its response. The next day, Japan denounced the ban as absolutely unacceptable. In response to those supply constraints, a Japanese mining ship departed on January 12th for a remote atoll to conduct the world's first attempt at extracting rare earth sludge from a depth of 6 kilometers, a key step in Japan's strategy to reduce its mineral dependence on China. Tokyo is not waiting to be choked out. It's cutting its own lifelines free from Chinese control. Now, here's where the counter-argument needs to be heard fairly. Japan's missiles may extend its reach, but until it can independently see and target at range, its counterstrike capability risks remaining more symbolic than decisive in a high-end conflict. That's a real limitation. Missiles without targeting data are expensive noise. Japan's sensor network and intelligence infrastructure are still catching up to the ambition of its new strike systems. 2 additional locations are under consideration for hosting the upgraded Type 12 missiles: Camp Yufuin in Oita Prefecture on Kyushu, and a site in Okinawa Prefecture. Stationing them on Okinawa Island would enable the Japanese military to strike targets along China's southeastern coastline, the Taiwan Strait, and all of Taiwan. If those deployments proceed, the coverage gap shrinks considerably. The trap gets tighter. Japan, the Philippines, and Taiwan are working together in new ways to deal with both an increasingly assertive China and a less reliable United States. But for Tokyo and its democratic neighbors, their deepening defense relations are a double-edged sword. While they complicate decision-making for Chinese military planners, they also risk tempting Beijing to act before its window of opportunity closes. That is the central danger beneath all of this. The stronger the trap, the more urgently Beijing considers springing first. China currently deploys an average of 40 to 50 warships and Coast Guard vessels daily in the South China Sea, along with a large maritime militia force, despite earlier pledges not to militarize the region. That daily deployment number tells you everything about how Beijing views the commitments it makes in public. The civilian ships, the armed merchants, the fishing militia, they're all part of the same architecture. Japan has now identified the architecture. It's built a response designed to make every strait a killing ground for any hostile naval formation, military or civilian. Tokyo formalized the concept of a counterstrike capability in late 2022 through 3 national security documents that redefine the country's defense posture. Those guidelines authorize the acquisition of systems capable of striking enemy bases if Japan comes under attack. That's a country that changed its doctrine, then funded it, then deployed it, all within 4 years. The off-switch Japan found isn't a single weapon. It's a geographic chokehold, 5 straits, a web of missiles, a distributed kill chain stretching from Kyushu to Yonaguni, and a new legal mandate to use it first if necessary. China's civilian ships turned the Pacific gray. Japan's answer is to make that gray zone lethal. Is Japan's counterstrike posture enough to genuinely deter China if Beijing decides its window is closing? Or does it accelerate the very confrontation it's meant to prevent? And if China's armed merchant fleet continues expanding, at what point does the international community treat those civilian ships as military targets under the laws of war? What do you think? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more analysis like this on the Indo-Pacific's most dangerous dynamics, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.